I'll read 1 hour after finishing recording last week's unboxing. This came in the post, and it is likely that Iron Man 1 I said I'd never came. I just wanted to clear that up so I didn't look like an idiot when I open it up, and it is the 90s Iron Man Epic Collection. See? It is. I will not keep at it criticising the covers, but again, there are issues in this collection they have previously used for covers of trades, ones they remastered and touched up. And the only reason they didn't use them is because they want to trick people into buying the collection thinking that it is something different. Their dream is some guy coming into a comic book store after seeing a movie and buying two trades that basically have the same contents, but they didn't realise it because they had different covers and names. Case in point, a huge portion of this was and is already available in both this and this. There are a few issues in here that are not available, but I am disgustingly fulfilling Marvel's perverse desire by having gotten all three of the times they've reprinted this shitty Iron Man crossover. This is volume... Actually, here is another good example. They had already done all the work required to make that a cover. Or why not use the back cover as the front cover for this one? This is volume 20, comics from 1994 to 1995. And it has got the last batch of Iron Man issues before the cross-dressing begins. It will be interesting to see if they do the cross-dressing as an Avengers Epic Collection or an Iron Man one, or likely both. Without the entire crossover, there isn't enough Iron Man comics to round off the final collection of his original series. We open straight with this crossover. It is a crossover between Iron Man, War Machine, Force Works, and Marvel Comics Presents. This is a run on Iron Man that nobody really remembers or talks about. It has a cool armour, the modular armour. It also revamped Rhodey Rhodes as War Machine. And to look at some of the covers, you'd think that seems fun, but I have tried reading this run before and it is a snoozer. I gave up after like 5 issues. I didn't like Iron Man, but even when the book had him fake his death and be replaced with Rhodey Rhodes again, it's just not a very compelling book. I have read this crossover before though, and I think something that is incredibly telling about the book's lack of appeal is there are story arcs which are based around Iron Man teaming up with different characters. Before this, there was a story arc with the New Warriors and 90s 4 and Hulk. The other thing is, this run on Iron Man, it might be the first instance of a comic published with revisionist history of the 90s to make people think that the 90s were much worse than they were. This was before the Clone Saga, this is before the cross-dressing, and so there isn't those linchpins to point to. And instead, this writer, and I shit you not, he had Iron Man and Captain America moaning about how edgy and gritty the new generation of heroes are. They think that the New Warriors and 90s 4 are too dark and cynical. Any valid criticism of the 90s and the tone of 90s comics coming from comic book writers has almost never been sincere. It has been deflection. People need to make their work seem better by comparison. And in this case, and in many cases, by false or unfair comparison. And if you want to complain about something from the 90s, how about Force Works? If you put Force Works against the New Warriors in a competition of terrible 90s dreck, it's not even a competition. It doesn't matter what decade we were in. If it was the 80s, they would still complain about how edgy and gritty and dark everything is, because they need other things to seem terrible to make their work look better. With the 90s, they looked out in that there indeed was problems in the 90s, shite like this. But had there not been, they would have still insisted other parts of the 90s were terrible, because they need it to be. Force Works could not be a better poster child for the true bad stuff of 90s comics. I have talked about Force Works in other videos, and I won't repeat myself here. Force Works were just a terrible editor who was editing Iron Man, being embarrassed about editing West Coast Avengers, so he made them, quote, cooler, end quote, by remaking them as Iron Man's sidekicks. This is a crossover between all that editor's books, Iron Man, War Machine, Force Works. It's barely a story. It's somehow about 6 parts longer than the actual story being told. The only real quality to find in this story, like often in Force Works, very occasionally the 3 good characters saddled with starring in that series get a shine. Like u.s.agent, he gets a few good little fights, and impressively, Charlotte Witch gets a big fight with the bad guy. Let's not focus on him, or I'll gan the way of the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episodes with Mac blacking up. You know you're in for a bad read when the best parts of Summit are issues of Force Works. The art is inconsistent throughout this entire epic collection, much as it is for Force Works and War Machine's books. This is a really, really bad editor. There is some outrageously shocking, shoddy art, and then some that is totally alright. After that tedious crossover, we have a few issues of plain Iron Man comics, and we went a whole issue without a guest star. Now it is Captain America. This might be that issue with that bit about the New Warriors. I don't think it is, though. I remember them sitting down and talking. Could this be it? No, it's not. And then we've got Scarlett Johansson. The only thing I know about these issues is we briefly get to see Scarlett Johansson back in her Silver Age costume, which everyone talks about like it is awful, but I think it is underrated. It's also got a bit of a twist now because she used to have black hair, and now when she's wearing it, she has got red hair. Oh, this is actually something that I finally got something positive to say about this collection, and this is pretty telling. There were 3 issues worth of backup stories in 1 issue of Iron Man, 1 issue of War Machine, and 1 issue of Force Works. And because of that, because of the way that it was printed, I have never gotten to read this before, and I have really wanted to because u.s.agent is in it. Oh, fuck off. Never mind. This is just part 3. Fucking hell. Well, there goes that. Collect the whole fucking thing or collect nothing. There is no fucking point in having part 3 of a story in a collection. It means nothing to nobody. Parts 1 and 2 have never been collected. That Force Works trade didn't have whatever part was in an issue of that. This is infuriating, bad fucking product design, and it is totally at odds with the fucking bullshit I have to wade through with the Captain America Epic collections. They've got space to include fucking 200 pages of a terrible Punisher story and an entire Falcon Man miniseries. But Iron Man, well, forget about even getting the first 2 fucking parts of this story that had fucking part 3 in an issue of Iron Man. How come Captain America's epic collections need padding out with Falcon Man, but all of War Machine's comics aren't inserted into Iron Man's? How come you aren't padding it out with all the issues of Force Works? It's all fucking bullshit. And then we get to the extras, and we have got an ash can for that crossover. Remember ash cans? Boring. It's boring. Didn't bother reading it. I suppose you get an insight into how shit the Iron Man books were. As if you wouldn't have already sensed that from the trade that you have just read. This is the editor here. This is him. He's fucking awful. He forced Roger Thomas to kill off a character that Roger Thomas didn't want to kill off under threat of firing him. And then when Roger Thomas did it, he fired him anyway. We get a look at some of the ads. Iron Man action figures. Didn't think I had any. No, I had one. I think it was Gardman. There's some Fred Embeck, so at least there's something entertaining in here. And here is something from one of the swimsuit specials, and then a poster, random art from 1 page of 1 issue, the remastered cover for that other trade collection, and there's the back cover to that collection, and here is the back cover to this collection. This isn't a great epic collection for anyone. Bad comics. I have not read some of them, but I feel fair in my assumption. What I have read is bad, and the editor doesn't inspire any faith whatsoever. This editor also oversaw all of the cross-dressing and the teen Iron Man shite. On account of this being a collection of such a load of crap, I'll give it 7 thumbs up.